Hey there, welcome to the Single Mom Glow Up podcast. I'm Bribri, and today's episode is super special, personal. One, it's my birthday. I just turned 30 today, so that makes it special. And two, it's all about my journey into the single motherhood, the highs, the lows, and the life changing moments that shaped who I am today. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed, you're unsure, or like you lost a part of yourself in the chaos of parenting, this one is for you. Because I have lost myself many, many times and found myself many times. So get cozy and let's dive in. So I'm going to set the scene for you. My life before becoming a single mom, even that was quite a journey. But my oldest is now 10. So if you do the math, right? I just turned 30. My oldest turned 10 2 weeks ago, right? So what does that mean? It means when I was 19 years old, I was still in college studying psychology. I had a kid while I was in college and finished my degree. And then actually, I went to get my master's in counseling and I did that while pregnant as well with my son. So during that entire time, I was with the same guy. He was great as a dad with my daughter, and the things started to fall apart after I got pregnant with my son. You know, things didn't work out. There were like three strikes. Things were going well, right? And then things started to decline. And so we were living. Okay, let me rewind a bit. When my daughter was born, it was long distance. Our relationship was long distance. He moved up here when he was 6 months old. He lived here in this house with my parents and our daughter. Things were good. We both were he was finding a job and was working, and I was in school, and things were really good. And then they were so good that we moved out. At that point, I was working as a teacher. This is when I was in grad school, working as a high school, a special education teacher. In the evenings, like 2 or 3 nights a week, I would go to grad school. He would be home with our daughter and get her from daycare. He also was working. But then at one point, he quit his job and totaled his car. And then when he got a new car, it was like it cost just as much as the other one. So, long story short, I couldn't support us financially. I wasn't going to give up grad school. We ended up moving back with my parents. And then maybe 6 months after that, my son was born. Their dad said that he was working, but I'm not so sure when. His mom came to visit our son when he was about 6 weeks old. When it was time for her to go back, to Georgia, they walked outside to drop her off, and the car was gone. I got raped dead. And so when that happened, that was kind of like strike three, right? I said three strikes. That was strike three. Not for me, but kind of just in general. And so the plan was for him to go back to Georgia and recoup, and then I would stay here, get my master's degree at the end of the year, and then look at moving down there with our kids. We were also engaged and had engaged for a year at that point. So that was a plan. And then a couple of weeks later, a week and a half later, he moved down to Georgia. And he and I were on FaceTime maybe like a week into that, not even. He mentioned that his ex invited him out for coffee. And he's like, hey, do you mind if I meet up with her? And I'm like, yeah, no, I trust you, because I did. I trusted him. He hadn't given me any reason not to trust him with stuff like that. And so it was fine. And then the next morning I woke up and I was like, how did his ex know that he was in Georgia to invite him for coffee? So he said that she reached out to him on Twitter. So what did I do? I looked to see what the exchange was. He was the one who reached out, and he invited her out for coffee, and he said that she's the only person that he has a genuine connection with. And that shattered the rose-colored glasses I've been wearing the past 7 years. That ultimately led to the demise of the relationship. And a lot of times, I don't necessarily condone snooping, right? But if I hadn't snooped, I don't think maybe we still be to get to it. Oh, I can't even imagine. Snooping saved my life. Like I said, I don't necessarily condone it in general. It's not like the best thing to do, but in certain situations, in certain situations, like, it could be a good thing. So when those rose-colored glasses shattered, it was like, oh gosh, like this has been going on for so long. I just didn't realize how bad it was. And what I mean by this is he's a covert narcissist. And I'm not going to get too much into that, but maybe in a future episode we can dive into covert narcissism. You know, you can have a guest come on and do that. But it's like regular narcissism. They tend to get their narcissistic supply by making you shitty them and being pitiful. And so he tended to do that, right? Like I would end every argument apologizing profusely because he would turn it around and make me feel so bad for even bringing something up. This is like avoiding accountability. That's what my relationships were like. Oh, back then, and it was really, I had dated someone before him for like a few months. And I was like 17. And then I had like a little high school relationship here or there. But like the first serious relationship, and that was for most of my young adulthood, like from 19 to 23. And, you know, the goal was to get married. The goal was to be together forever. I shouldn't even like say that about him. And the goal was to be together forever and, you know, have this cute little nuclear family. And he was going to be a producer and I was going to be a therapist. And what even? But yeah, and then, you know, that happened. I ended things and embarked on the journey of single motherhood. And it wasn't easy. When I first broke up with him, it was sort of like, you need to get help. And, you know, he's going to get help and he's going to go out there and things will get better and we'll be able to get back together and still get married. Go as planned. And it didn't happen at all. Didn't happen, and I'm grateful it didn't happen, but I was very delulu when I thought it was going to happen. So there was that piece. So I had a friend who was going through the same, more intense, honestly. She was going through a divorce. You know, long story short, with a slight trigger warning, she didn't make it. Things were too tough on her, and she took her own life. And so I was dealing with the grief of that. I was dealing with a new baby. I was dealing with grad school. I was dealing with a job internship and, you know, my kid's dad being in bitter baby dad mode and not paying anything and just texting to start arguments because I didn't know what I was doing. And dating and not being ready to date, and that was a whole mess. I was just flailing around, just a hot mess. And it was scary and uncomfortable, and it eventually reached a point that something had to give, something had to change. Let me take you back to the breakup, right? That first breakup. I had such a massive void in my heart. And just so you know me, you know, since this is the first episode, I tend to err on the side of relationship stuff. Like, that's my lane. As a therapist, my practice and a lot of the work that I have done is in relationships and couples counseling, just relationality in general. That's my lane. I love it. That is sort of like the thing I speak to the most. But that is not the only thing that single moms care about. And so I do have, actually, I'm recording this after I did a few interviews already, but I already have something lined up where we talk about other stuff, not just relationship stuff. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm not posting the interviews on YouTube, but I will still also talk about other stuff. When you hear me talk about this, I just want you to know I'm going to talk mainly about relationship stuff. I started dating like not even 3 months after the relationship ended, and it was like a 7-year relationship. And so I wasn't ready. And what happened with the first person who ghosted me, which was like the first person I connected with, the first date I went on post, actually technically not the first person I connected with, but in person, you know, we had a great first date, and then he faded out. It wasn't like an immediate ghost. It was like a fade out ghost where, we go back and forth and his text frequently changed and I asked about it. And then he was like, no, I'm not going to ghost you. And then that was the last message. For a good. How many times have you heard, I'm not going to ghost you? And then that was the last message. Anyway, well, that was almost as painful. The initial breakup, right? I don't know if you've experienced that first and fourth. No, it wasn't no bright, interesting, but that first break more or just as much of that initial breakup. And that's because a lot of times, like what I did, he didn't take time to heal with first breakup. So then when you get into another relationship, you're like you still have all that baggage. And so of course it's gonna hurt just as much before you didn't let go of anything. That was my first hard lesson. It was a lesson, but it didn't hit as a lesson until I learned it a few more times with a few more people. Because, like I said, I was with my dad from age 17, barely 17, like literally my birthday. He messaged me for the first time. So from 17 to 23, we were together and also still we weren't together afterwards or anything done, but still in this toxic co-parenting, even though he wasn't present because he was in a different state, post-relationship toxicity. And so I ended up I had a rebound boyfriend about a year, just under a year after. It was like the exact opposite. My kid's dad is like super light skin, skinny, not anymore, but he was short. What else? Artistic. The guy dated tall, like 6'4", big guy, like big teddy bear energy, except evil teddy bear, like Freddy's teddy bear. I didn't know that at first, but just stable, financially stable, basically an accountant kind of person. Oh, did I say that? He was also dark skin. If like literally they were just complete opposite people. It was the most obvious rebound ever, except it wasn't obvious to me until I was out of shit. And yeah, that went terribly, horribly. And then again, another relationship, about a year, just under a year after, and that was a bit better. It still didn't work out, and we're not friends. We're cordial. But I didn't realize that. I didn't mature myself, but then I grew out of it really quickly because of the breakup. Anyway, that was a major challenge. And then afterward, things started to change, and he broke up with me. I took some time to reconsider relationship, what I wanted, and I realized that I didn't know what I wanted, and that was part of the problem. Like the people that I was dating, I would do this thing where I would become who they liked. I would study them and learn who they liked, and then I would make myself into that person. And I didn't take time to figure out if I even liked the person that I was dating. The person that I was when I was with my kid's dad is very different from the person that I was when I was with the guy after him. And they're very different from the person I was with the guy after him. And so I was like, hold up, I'm doing something wrong here. Let me fix it. So that's where I was. And right, but it wasn't easy. Like coming to that realization of I've had a hand in my own relationship demise. I don't know what I'm doing. And then on top, how do I not know what I'm doing with this? The same way a doctor isn't going to perform an operation on himself. I can't do therapy on myself. And you can't either. All right. It was really like I was facing a lot of anxiety. Like I was having panic attacks at least immediately when I woke up. And then when I went to sleep, and I was having all these health issues. And I was just so stressed out. I wasn't present with my kids, right? Like my daughter, especially, she was going through it too. Like my son doesn't really know anything different. He was just a baby. And he, his dad is kind of like some guy that he calls dad now, and he knows what a dad is, but like, yeah. But my daughter knows the time where he was there all the time. And all of a sudden he was, and his answers sucked. And my answers were honest, but they weren't what she wanted to hear. And so she and I had a lot of, not necessarily head butting. She was so little. But she had a lot of big feelings, and I didn't have any room for her big feelings because I was having my own. It was just a mess. It was a sad mess. I knew that it couldn't continue that way. Sitting there, I was stuck in this survival headspace of just like, I was just in so really like the anxiety and the lack of closeness with my kids, the inability to ask for support unless I absolutely needed it. I sucked at asking for support. I was so, oh gosh, like you would have to put a gun to my head to get me to ask for help. And then I would feel terrible afterwards. I'd feel so guilty and so shameful that it would just make me need more support. um, but that's what my days were looking like. And I'd had enough of the survival. I decided that I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to step into something completely new. I didn't necessarily expect that, but that journey changed everything. And so, unfortunately, we have reached the end of the time for this story. But I will talk to you all about it in part 2, which is coming up next. I know this feels like a cliffhanger, but it's going to be right. Okay, you'll be all right. Just stay tuned. But before that, I just want to thank you so much for listening to my story thus far. I know so many of you may be in a similar place right now, and I want you to know that it is okay. I promise. It's okay. You will get through it. In the next episode, I'll be sharing exactly how everything changed for me. And in future episodes, we'll be talking about how everything changed for other single moms who have been through what you're going through now. I'll talk about how I found myself again, how I rebuilt my life, and then how it all fell apart and how I'm rebuilding it again now. And how I discovered the power in choosing myself. And that right there is the key. So I want you to listen to that part specifically too. If you miss taking nothing else from it, listen to that part about choosing yourself. And so trust me, if you don't want to miss it, so make sure you subscribe to the Single Mom Glow Up so you do not miss part 2. And I'll see you next, Cloudy. Bye-bye.